What is the difference between a Moore and a mealy machine? Because as a kid, I never remember my dad taking me somewhere and telling me, look there, son, it's a Moore machine. You see that right there? It's a Moore machine. So basically, these machines are concepts slash systems of things that you can build or do. Now, let's say you have these two diagrams. Which one of them is a Moore machine? So basically, in each one of these diagrams, you have the different states circled with yellow circles here. So here, for example, you have state 1, here you have state 2, here you have state 3, and this right here is the output. So if you are in state 1, the output of your system, of your machine, is going to be 0. If you are here, your output is going to be 1. If you are here in state 3, your output is going to be 0. So basically, the most defining thing of a Moore machine is that the output depends on the current state. Oh my god, my fucking handwriting is so bad. Alright, so the output depends only on your current machine. So if you are here at H3, that's going to be your output. Now what do we mean by states? We don't mean the USA, we don't mean like the avatar state. Basically, let's say you have a traffic light and the different states represent different states of the traffic light. So let's say you are in state 1. This would mean something like you have a red light. I'm too lazy to draw a red light, so imagine you have a traffic light, and state 1 would mean you have a red light. If you're right here at state 3, it would mean you have yellow light, and so on. Now what are these bunch of ones and zeros going out and in of this diagram? In each state, you must have a 0 and a 1 input option. So in state 3, you should be able to input a 0 and go here, or a 1 and go here. In a mealy and Moore machine, you should imagine that you always have the two options, a 0 and 1. Basically, it's like having a keyboard and being able to press a 0 or a 1 only, and you should always be able to press them. So there's no undefined input for a specific state. Now this right here is a mealy machine. How can you tell it's a mealy machine? The one most important thing is that we don't have the inputs, the outputs. We don't have the outputs inside of the circles of the states. We have the outputs. Here we had the output, for example, 0 inside, and here we have the output outside. So here if we press 1 right here, we will have the output 1. If we press 0, we will have the output 1. That is basically the main difference. Right here in the mealy machine, we have many more possible outputs than in a Moore machine. And if you are in a specific state, let's say S1, you are not outputting something the whole time you are in that state. The only time the output happens is when you press the button. For example, here if you press the 1, you will get the output 1. And then you will transition to this state right here, which is the same state as 1. But basically you will only get this output when you press the 1 on the keyboard. So right here we have the output depends on the current state and the input. That is basically the main difference between these two machines. Now I'll give you some examples so you can tell in the exercises that you are solving what you are supposed to be using. A very typical example of a Moore machine is a traffic light, because you want the traffic light to stay in red until a certain time passes. Other examples are if you want to enter a sequence. So let's say you want to recognize the sequence 110 by your machine. So you would use the Moore machine. Now an example for a mealy machine is something that happens in an instant. So let's say you are entering your password, and this right here is your password, and you press enter. So only when you press enter, the machine will evaluate your password and output something. After you finish pressing it, there will be no specific output. It only depends on your input. Another example is, let's say there's a gigantic fucking train heading to a child. This is a train right here, okay? Don't let my artistic skills confuse you, and there's a fucking child on the track of the train for some reason. So what do? You press the red button. This one is red, by the way. I'm too lazy to change the colors. This is a red button, and you press the red button, okay, in order to try to save the child, basically. And this would be an example of a mealy machine that would act based on your input.